Hey, it's Joe West from the West Barn with
Mike Shimshack.
We got Jamie Tate here today. Before we get started, I want to remind you to subscribe, hit notifications wherever you're listening, and tell a friend. Jamie Tate is a Grammy Award winning and Emmy Award winning producer, engineer, and mixer. He's made records for Thomas Rhett, Taylor Swift, Alan Jackson, Rhett Akins, Vince Gill, Alison Krauss, John Prine, Miranda Lambert, Jack Ingram, Brooks and Dunn, Sheryl Crow, Montgomery Gentry, to name a few. And he also owns a pretty famous recording studio in town called the Ruckus Room.
Am I famous?
Do you own that? You
yeah.
own that?
16 years.
Wow, dude.
The building's famous, I'm not.
Really? It was the Ruckus Room before you had it?
No. It was Reflections before me, and then it was Blueberry Hill, and it ran into some amount of disarray. When I moved in, there was about 1.5 inches of mouse poop on every horizontal surface, and I came in and resurrected it. And 16 years later, I'm still working.
Dude, I did a session at your place, and one of those deals where I had a song on a session, and I came in. And what I remember from it was that I laughed nonstop.
Oh,
you
yeah.
had like every time in a big studio, you got all this glass and isobooths and session players who were inertly funny, songwriters who were funny, and then engineers. I could tell that you had been in studios and you had collected all the very best. You didn't stop tape without something incredibly funny to say.
We like to have fun.
It was insane. It was the most fun I've ever had in a session.
Was my fart piano there?
No.
That is a new addition.
It's a piano that...
It's a piano. That's how I tune vocals. It's actually a fart piano. You know, I got it at Toys R Us a couple years ago before they went out of business. Black Friday sale. My son and I went in there. My, at the time, 5-year-old. He came out with this really kick-ass lightsaber, and I came out with a fart piano. And it's the most used item in the studio.
That's the funny thing about recording studios. I did a record at Metalworks in Toronto. It was Triumph's old studio. And they had a console that went like 100 feet each way, a big SSL. And all we could talk about was the centipede machine that was out.
I so want a Frogger machine for the lounge.
You do have a popcorn machine.
Oh, that was the first thing I bought.
I remember
I got the bank loan, and the first thing I bought was a popcorn
There's
machine.
nothing better than spending your entire session trying to pick the stuff out of your teeth.
And it's great. We should have like string endorsements because all the musicians come out there with, popcorn butter on their fingers. But
dude, they should use Diodero strings too. Like the high E string could be a good floss.
Yeah. That's funny.
Well, dude, you're a staple. Mike was telling me, it's like, I want to talk to him about like the sound. Why don't you?
Well, I remember I moved here in like just early 2010, late 2009, 2010. And I remember when I got here and I started kind of getting the lay of the land, people were talking about Ruckus Room. And one of the things that I remember saying is that I don't recall who it was, but Jamie was kind of changing the sound of Nashville. Because
I got in so much trouble back in the 90s.
Well, this is
hated me.
No, this is 2010.
I know.
Oh, so you started way before.
They started hating him in the 90s.
Oh boy.
But that you were one of the guys that really introduced heavy compression into town. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have the scars to show it too.
Stop right now.
But that's
play
that's
like
hard though, because any other place you go to now, when you're comparing it to his, like that's a hard.
You should play like an old country record where compression was considered like, should we even use a compressor on the entire record, right? And
Right.
it's like cut to modern day where it's like
Splam! Everything in your face.
Thank you. You're
Yes.
that guy that
Yeah,
brought that to town.
You took some heat for that.
Oh boy. I was, when I first started, it was, I left college. I have 1 hour left to graduate, by the way. It was
Congratulations.
my last middle finger to the college. But anyway, I got a job. And I started compressing stuff. This is like 96, 97, my whole career. Yeah.
The genesis
I got out of college. I just started compressing stuff.
Hey, you come over here. I want to compress you. And I bought my first Jomi compressor, and I bought this and I bought that. And I listened to rock records. I was listening to Jellyfish. I mean, Spilt Milk. Oh. When Spilt Milk came out, It was like difficult to listen to because it was so compressed. And now it doesn't. You don't even notice it. Yeah. It's normal.
Well, here's the dirty little trick about the music business is it's not EQ, it's compression. It's like, oh, you want to EQ over time? compress it. If you want something to be spitty at the beginning and fat at the end, rather than saying, hey, I want it to be bright, and then everything, the whole signal is bright.
Yeah, it sticks out. It's not even anymore.
But it takes somebody who knows what they're doing.
It took a long time to learn it.
Boy,
there are a lot of bad mixes out there, mine, when I was learning.
So many people will be like, they don't even understand, like, oh, what is the hold on a compressor? Or what is, when you say soft knee versus hard knee, and they don't understand sort of.
Oh, I'm hard, baby. No, I'm just sorry.
You have to have a finite, at least, understanding of what it is that you're doing, so then you can break all the rules and do the crazy stuff.
Yeah, and you got to learn all your different types of compressors because they're all different. They're like different guitars, different microphones, That's one of the first things I ask interns, name the 4 kinds of compressors. I know there are more than that, but,
there's 4 kinds. Can you name them?
Optical, VCA,
Verimue,
yeah, and FET, right.
And FET is really a byproduct of a VCA compressor. We just had Ivana Manley on.
Oh, really? Was she here? Cool.
Well, no, she was. We did her via Skype. Cool. But I do think there is a 4th. But
there is.
They're very different, and it's like you need to know that. Hey, this needs a Verimue compressor on it. Mm-hmm. I want that for this. It's going to have all the personality that I want for this thing, but it's like you don't have to swim around. Sometimes you put it through 5 compressors and choose it that way, but other ways you can get there quickly. Now, like when you're mixing a record, how long does it take you to mix a song versus the old days where it was a song a day? Is it still a song a day for you?
At a certain point in my career, I was doing 6, that's, Chris Lord-Alge works at that pace, but now I'm doing, if I'm mixing a record and I do 2 a day, I'm doing all right. Yeah.
For me, I find I get 1 done in halfway through another.
Yeah, that's about right.
And I come back and I do my revisions for song 1 and finish 2 and start a 3rd.
Well, I'm still all analog. I use an analog console and outboard gear, so I like to let it sit overnight, have the clients give them time to listen to it. That way I don't have to do a recall because they don't come back.
Here's what else I remember. I grew up on an Atari Series 54 console, a Series 34C and a Series 54.
That's the console I learned on at college.
Which one? The 34?
The 54.
The 54.
There's a button for everything on that thing.
It's an impressive looking console.
Yeah.
Didn't sound that great.
Yeah, it sounded kind of woody, but yeah.
But you had an Atari Concept 1 when I was there.
Concept Elite.
Okay.
The 1 was in my B room. It's long gone. That was Michael McDonald's old. By the way, when I bought that thing, I was installing it. I was wiring it, and I was like clipping off these old connections. I was like, these look familiar. I'd installed it at Michael McDonald's house, and I'm clipping off my old connections to put new connections on. So I saw him at a restaurant a few years later. I was like, hey, man, I think I bought that console I installed for you. And he's like, oh, you're the sucker who bought that thing for me. So, yeah.
Well, the other thing I remember is, so we went in the A room and we cut this and it was like bang, bang, boom. And I was like, wow, these guys, they've done this before.
These musicians are amazing.
Well, and it was you in the process too. It was just like it was still, I want to say either on a radar or a tape machine. Is that possible?
I've been on, I used Radar up until about 11 years ago.
Radar is a multi-track digital platform before Pro Tools.
Yeah.
And it was all over Nashville. I was one of the first people to bring Pro Tools to Nashville. I came down and made a record at Sound Emporium with Dan Lanwall for Emmylou Harris. And guys...
You talking Wrecking Ball?
I did Stumble into Graves.
Okay.
So I had guys calling me in 2001 and they'd say, hey, we heard that you had a Pro Tools rig over there, and they would book time to come in like it was, like somebody had pulled in with the first Corvette,
Got to have a secret handshake, a decoder ring.
But I remember going into the B room, and it might not have been you, because you might have been doing your thing in A room. And
I had a couple guys working for me back then. Yeah,
we went to the B room to do vocals.
Mm-hmm, that's right.
So I don't think it was you, but I remember this guy. I remember, and I've been an engineer for 25 years at that point, or 20 years, and I remember thinking, I have never been more symbiotic with an engineer. Like, he was just like, you asked him to get to a place in the song. And what people don't realize with Pro Tools, because it doesn't exist anymore, is that when you were on tape or on a linear thing, editor like Radar that acted like tape, getting to a specific spot in a song was very difficult. Mm-hmm. The capstan motor wouldn't be accurate and you'd be plus or minus 10 seconds. But I can just remember this guy that was doing vocals, and it was like my brain was attached to his fingers, and I was really blown away with that.
Oh, it's like playing a video game with some guys. It's great.
It was a really high level of recording. That was what I remember taking away from that. Like, man, these guys, I got a lot of waste in my game because I was used to doing records, large format records in New York City, where it was like you go and spend a month making a record.
Right.
And it was like, let's go ahead and work on the guitar sound for an hour and a half. And you guys were not having that. You were like, oh man, it's like, it's done already. And I was just blown away by the efficiency and the level of sounds that you could get. And it's
things have slowed down tremendously, speed-wise, just workload-wise. Just in town, not me, just workload in the whole town. And I'm still working at that with that kind of mentality because that's how I was raised.
I think it's good too because we were talking. Billy Decker was on a week or so ago, and Billy Decker is like, yeah, I mix maybe 10 to 16 songs a day.
Well, he pulls up preset 2, charges you $150, and off you go.
Well, it's like you do a ton of demos. You do a ton of album work over there.
I don't do demos anymore.
Well,
I did, yeah.
In the old days when I was there,
right,
it was like that pace makes you did years and years of that breakneck pace.
Yeah.
And now, whenever you've got the time, it's like you're not doing any of that rudimentary mind-wasting work. You're still moving at the same speed, and most of your time is spent in this creative zone where you're able to like really take the song somewhere rather than worrying about accents.
You can sit there and listen to your mix and like analyze it and get it tweaked in within half a dB of its life just so it's perfect.
And are you using Pro Tools automation right now? Or are you using console automation?
Console. Yeah, I'm Pro Tools is a tape machine.
Is it still Disc Mix on the Atari console?
It's Eagle. It's similar. It has switch automation on it.
Do you remember Disc Mix?
Yeah, it's the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So there'd be SMPTE, time code on a channel, and then you would sort of like sit there and, it was a very tedious process. But I loved it. I thought it was really organic. I missed that with Pro Tools.
I've tried to mix in Pro Tools. I've done mixes in Pro Tools. So I took a song, I mixed it in Pro Tools, then I mixed it on my console, I compared them, and I shut off my mix in Pro Tools, and I haven't gone back since. So it's just a process I'm used to. I like my console. I like pushing stuff. In Pro Tools, I don't get that. There's nothing to push against. Yeah. I need to push my limits a little bit to be a little happy.
Even though I've been working in a hybrid setup, but my main areas are Pro Tools Center, right? Mm-hmm. I really miss hitting update on a fader, right?
Right.
Or join if you're on an SSL and just grabbing things and seeing a fader move and just hitting update.
My other rooms have the D command and D control, and I've tried it. They're laid out for guys like me. That's why radars came out for analog guys like me to make the switch easier. And I've tried, I have the big, what is the big one? The D command, D control. I don't know what the hell it is, but I have one of those in my B room, and I've tried. It doesn't react.
So what are you doing for recalls?
It has a snapshot. It's just like an SSL.
Oh, it does.
But it's exactly like sit there and watch a pot, and then it lights up on the screen.
It goes on the meters. The plus is move it to the right. The
How
negative
long does
is,
it take you to recall a song?
Well, see, I don't really move stuff very often. I can make a mix bright.
Listen up to this.
I can make a mix bright and thin, or heavy and girthy with a lot of weight, and not really touch my EQ knobs too much. It's all in the balances.
All of the super hip dudes that I've ever had the opportunity to be in the room with, it's like gear. Some of their gear they never even touch.
Oh, I haven't touched stuff in years.
They control their threshold by turning the input level up to the device, right? To get it. Hey, I want 10 dB of compression. I'm just going to feed more to it.
Kind of, yeah.
And it's just it's literally everything is set up like you're running it through just a stock thing. And then on your 2 mix, maybe you do a lot of work.
It's so instinctual. I don't turn my outboard.
So your drums probably stay the same.
Yeah, but I can get different tones out of them, which is bizarre.
So let's say you've got your drum set up and you've got that part of your console where you got your EQ sort of down in. How are you changing your drum sound then?
It's the relationship between the direct sounds, the overhead, the room, how much kick you're giving it.
So your fader levels are a big part of it.
Yeah.
But let's say, are you re-EQing that snare channel, or does it stay the same?
The snare I EQ more than the snare and the vocal I EQ more than anything else. Everything else is kind of static, honestly.
Is your 2 mix heavy with processing?
No. I work on mixes so much that before I even automate, I'll work on a mix for 3 hours. So when I play it from top to bottom, it sounds final. And then when I do 3 passes of automation, I'll do 1 for the instruments. I'll do a pass of just writing instruments, and I'm doing, barely nudging these faders. I'll do the next pass of vocals. I'll put my compressor in, and I'll do 1 more pass writing a vocal, and that's it.
So when someone says, "Hey, recall that mix from last week," and bring the vocal up,
It'll take me probably less than 5 minutes to recall a mix.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's great.
And do you feel confident? Like, I never felt good when I did recalls on the SSL. I never felt like it felt the same as
I
the
have
original.
it set up so I can do a direct comparison between the new mix and my old mix. Because I print back to Pro Tools, I can switch back and forth. That actually takes more time, making sure, convincing myself that those knobs are in the same spot than it does to actually turn the knobs back.
I get it.
You know, because sometimes it doesn't feel right. Even though it sounds right, it doesn't feel right. And you're like, you get all kind of weirded out by it. But, you know.
How much of your time are you spending, like, as an engineer versus a producer?
Well, the producer, I always did. We're engineers. We do the job of a producer, right? There's a big time producer in town. I've done 3 records with him. I've met him twice. Okay. Anyway, so we always do the job of producer. All good engineers are producing. You know,
right?
We you know, when it's appropriate. You don't want to step over the producer and give him your opinions and stuff. But so I never had the confidence or ego to call myself a producer until recently. Isn't that weird?
What happened that you got the confidence?
I got pissed off. Everybody leaving my studio was getting production gigs.
Right.
Everybody came out. They're like, "Oh, I'm a big producer." The record labels were going, "Where are you doing this?" And they produced the next big record.
Right.
It was pissing me off.
It was like, "Oh, well, I'll just hire that dude." And
and they go to another studio inevitably. The best way to not to work on album 1 or album 2 is to have a hit with album 1. And it was like that. They come out of their studio, with these pretty much finalized masters. I mean, they were demos, but I took pride and I made everything sound like a record, hopefully. And they get production gigs. And I was like, well, why are they doing it? So I just started pitching stuff to labels and I started getting people signed, I haven't had the big hit yet as a producer. I've had tons of hits as an engineer, not the one with the production credit yet. But I have produced hit records because the producer wasn't there.
Yeah, I get it. Absolutely.
I just don't get the check in the mail.
Right. And a certain part of you has to be okay with that and be just like, hey, I need to work this year. And at the end of the year, whenever I do my 1099 add up, well, then, okay, I'll allow them to say they produced the record.
Sure.
And you're mixing everything that you're doing for the most part.
And tracking it. I like tracking it because I get a feel. My thumb is on the pulse of that, the studio where the musicians are. I know when it's working and when it's not. You just have a feel for it.
Yeah.
You can get feedback from those musicians. They're the best producers in town.
We just talked about that with Mark Hill
right?
this morning.
Yeah. Well, Mark,
when you hire these incredible musicians, they do a lot of the production.
There's a mix on my console right now that Mark played on for me. He's one of my go-to guys. Love him.
So whenever a lot of guys, myself included, gravitate away from tracking. I track records as a necessary evil to produce and mix them, right? And I usually I bring in one of my guys that graduated from my school. I use right now Ron Petroff as my main engineer, and if I'm tracking a big date, I'll bring him in because it's just I want to be able to be present in the room.
Right.
But it's like you seem to love recording.
Oh, it's all I've ever wanted to do.
More than mixing?
Well, just audio. Working with audio, recording. See, I'm just so used to it. It's so second nature. I've been in that studio for 16 years. I know everything. It's just second nature to me to, reach over and turn a knob or do whatever I need to be done and get a good headphone mix. It's just second nature. My mind is elsewhere. I'm on the arrangement of the song. So, yeah.
Yeah,
I'm all about the arrangement.
It wears me out. The tracking part. I tell you, the tracking date is fun. I
never have more fun in my life than on a tracking date.
Recording a vocal all day long. Like that just like, I would rather be at the dentist.
You record a vocal, you work on a vocal and work on it, and that's good.
If you have to. I mean, I would love to track the vocal in an hour. And a lot of times you can get it done in an hour.
No, what I'm saying is I seem to notice a trend of people going, all right, give me 3 passes and we'll comp it, and that's called production now.
I saw your post on this.
Oh boy, that pisses me off.
Okay, I didn't type.
So tell me what happened.
I didn't type a response to this, but I almost did because I didn't want to get into a fight online.
What do you mean? What the hell's that supposed to mean?
I wanted to get into a fight here. I knew you were coming.
Oh, come on.
I'm ambushing
Bring it on.
So tell me your post.
Which post?
It was a Facebook post that about tracking multiple tracks versus really working and punching.
Oh, the one. Okay, I wrote this post about. I was working with this singer. He wasn't very confident. It was his first time in the studio. He was scared. And I just wrote something about, the producer isn't the enemy. We're here to help you. It helps having a smiling face in the control room, positive feedback. But doing 3 passes
And
sending them off and comping it, that's not production.
Okay. I totally disagree with that.
Oh, okay.
And I'll tell you why. Because
you're going for the performance.
Well, there are people that once I start to really work them in a vocal, they disappear. They go in. It's the same as me beating up a guitar player, and all of his artistry goes away. So
you're working with real artists, though. Who are you talking about? I mean,
certain
Emmylou Harris, you're not going to beat her up over something.
There's certain versions of this, and sometimes I do have to go into. I did a Swedish record where we really had to concentrate because it was in English.
Enunciation.
Yeah, and they don't have certain. They don't have that.
Really?
It's duh. So you've got to like continually. There's 100 takes, and then you're punching every syllable. And on old tape machines, we would punch in the t of it, in and out. It was a real art form, and that is great. And sometimes it's totally necessary. But I find that a lot of times, if I get out of the way, and if you do have somebody who has something to offer, if you have James Otto, who just sang in here today and blew our hair totally off our heads, if you start to punch every syllable with those guys, they get so zoomed in that it loses all the heart of it. So sometimes I will do 3-4 takes, whole takes, and then go grab things I have to grab. Or if you do have to go in and do that whole old school thing, it is really just like whatever it takes. Sometimes you need a hammer. Sometimes you need a scalpel.
Absolutely.
So, but I don't ever respond online, and it's like just because it turns in, people can't hear your tone online, right? And then it's next thing you know, you're having a fight with someone who you actually really like and respect.
It's so silly. You can post a picture of an SM57 and a fight will ensue. It's so weird.
You're good at social media.
I am?
I think that your posts are very funny.
I really wanted to write for The Daily Show in another life.
You've got that kind of wit. Like, there are folks that whenever I'll watch a video, I'll be like, oh, this is good. I'm going to go down to the comments. This is going to be really good.
There are funny people out there.
I recently watched, remember that girl, something black, and she had Friday?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I've got to go to the comment section right now and just read it. You're like that kind of witty, like where it's just deadly, and it's just like good topics, good points and perspectives. But you come up on my feed all the time, and I always, when I'm doing this, I always stop and go back up and read yours, and I read the comments. It's great, man.
People take me too seriously. Don't take anything I'm saying too seriously. I'm here to entertain you online. I'm just making a stupid comment, and I want stupid comments back.
I like that you...
And the response is always, wait. So you're telling me that you don't... I'm like, calm down. Get your britches out your butt.
You said something yesterday, maybe. Oh. What did you say about... I think it was about pop country, maybe?
Oh, so I made a comment. I said, well, oh, God, this got me in trouble. I deleted it, by the way. I said, if Kane Brown was half the artist Johnny Cash was, he'd still be Luke Bryan.
That was it.
And somebody accused me of being racist. I'm like, well, switch it out with somebody else.
Dude, you remember there was somebody
else? If you look at everything through a negative eye, looking for racism, you're going to find that's not what I meant.
It reminded me of Music City memes.
Yes.
And there was like not Kenny Rogers, all those accounts that were up, and they were just like
not Jake Owen
stunningly funny, and had a shred of truth. But
I'm not denying I was one of those.
It wasn't were you? No.
Hey.
It wasn't. It's not completely like
I'm over
a shitty thing to say.
Picking my nose and stuff, and I forgot the camera's on. I wasn't really picking my nose, but
you can hide behind the comedy of it and the truth of it.
Yes, it's amazing what you can say with remember Mystery Science Theater? It's amazing what they got away with saying because they were puppets.
Right. Yes.
They coined the phrase "bite me," I think.
But let's face it, it's like
or dillweed. That was always a favorite. I don't know what it means.
You've got people in the genre that take themselves really seriously, and it's getting to the point where it's like.
But country is its own satire. They're taking themselves so seriously, it makes it so much worse.
But there are people that it's like they'll compare like Bob Dylan and James Taylor and Britney Spears.
Yeah.
Right? And Miley Cyrus. And then they'll put them at the same award show. And they'll put them up for the same awards.
Yeah.
And I think people just say, hey, we're not mad, but we want you to know that these aren't the same things going for the same awards. One's an entertainer, one's an artist. And it's like, okay, so there's this collision of art and commerce that's happening in the music business, and sometimes the commerce is always winning.
Always.
So people have that little bit of righteous indignation that they're like, why can't a real
because we
Miranda
feel like
Lambert
we
really
feel like
dominate?
we know the difference, and the general public is stupid and they can't. And we're caught in this area of we wish we could tell you, but we come up like assholes.
How many records have you done that have never been heard that are maybe some of your favorite pieces of music?
All of them.
And on their behalf, you're like, I cannot believe that this person is taking up 3.5 minutes on the radio when this person could be on.
I had a hook. I had a hit song with a song called Beta Hook. Right? I'm not taking anything away from that. That's the audience for this genre. There's a song called Bait a Hook. Great. Awesome. It was a big hit. Is it the best thing I've ever recorded? Oh my God, no. But I'm still proud to be part of that record. I gave it everything I have. And I'm not trying to, belittle it.
As with everything.
Well, maybe a little bit.
it's a nuanced discussion. You can still, like we were talking about Florida-Georgia Line on the last podcast, and I was saying I wanted to hate it. Our friend Jeff Giuliano mixed it. It sounded great. I wanted to hate it. It had all the lines that I hate, like Tan Leg Georgia Dream and, everything you would expect from like a party that's go drink in a field.
How many rhymes with Bacardi can you name?
It was that.
Yeah.
But you cannot deny that it was like, I really liked it.
Oh, it's connecting with people too.
And I've got this thing where it's like, it is a nuanced discussion, just like all the political stuff that's going on. Mm-hmm. It's like, yes, I agree with 49% of what you say and 49% of what they say and 1% undecided. And it's like at any given moment, I could be anywhere on that.
Important.
I could be anywhere on that spectrum.
Yeah.
But it's like, it is that. And it's like when someone comes up with a line like that, it makes the gnome in me, this guy that's angry that my friends and I'm
read my drafts folder.
Somebody else is on the radio and my song isn't. It's the heckler that's throwing snowballs at Santa at the Philadelphia Eagles game. Secretly, you're happy, and there's something about that. And I think it's really cool that you're unafraid because let's face it, these people are your clients. You may be doing a Kane Brown record next year.
Who knows?
That's what I'm saying.
So a couple years ago, I was doing a ton of big records. There, Foreshadow at a Big Machine. He would just call me. Hey, I need a song mixed. I didn't know who it was. He just sent a song over. It was Maddie and Tay or Thomas Rhett or whatever. It was really cool. But man, it was just a heavy process. The whole major label thing is such a heavy process. Great rewards. I mean, you get a lot of bragging rights, but I'm not really in this for bragging rights. I started working with independent artists, and boy, it's a lot more rewarding. Yeah, because it's the most important thing to them. This is one of the highlights of their lives. Mm-hmm. You get to connect with them. It just I don't know. I really love dealing with indie artists.
It's why I still love writing with people that are new.
Yeah,
because they still have
that wonder.
They still have the reason they got in it in their eyes.
Absolutely, I love that.
Have you ever been in the studio or in the writing room with someone, and it's just like, man, it couldn't be any more CPA tax accountant of like, where you're just like, okay, open your. Yeah.
Hi, I'm the A&R guy here to kill the vibe of the session. How are you doing?
Yeah, we can't say that. It's like, oh, I've done this a million times. It just wears me out. Sometimes I need someone else to reunite me with my original spark.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I just wrote 2 songs. I was in a benefit, and part of it was like they'd get to write with me. 2 people. One guy is in the Secret Service, and his wife is in the CIA.
His name is?
Incredibly cool. Which is totally cool. And she bought this for him as a gift, and another lady bought it for herself. I wrote 2 songs with them in the beginning of the year, and they're 2 of my favorite songs.
Isn't that great?
It's an incredible process to be a part of that for someone, making a record for someone where they get to sit and say, whoa, that sounds like a record, but I'm singing it. Mm-hmm. That's a thing that never gets old. And when we did that thing for Kyle's dad,
oh, that was incredible. Mike
shot this thing. He was shooting a pilot for like a reality TV show.
I wasn't. That actually came to me during the session.
Okay.
I wish I had the forethought. It would have been a whole different thing.
You're ruining my build-up. But why don't you? It was Kyle's father.
So, long story short, is a mutual friend of ours, a great guy named Kyle Kelso, who's also been on the podcast.
Father Vernon.
His father Vernon lives in Houston, Texas, and Vernon is probably in his mid-80s, but he was maybe early 80s when we did this, and he's been writing songs his whole life. So he had some of these songs he wrote like when he was in the Navy in the 1950s, and he just always wanted to come to Nashville and record with the band. So all I did was, mention the idea to Kyle, and Joe and I kind of facilitated the musicians here because Kyle was living in New York City. So he came down, and his dad came up from Houston, and we recorded this stuff here, and it was one of the most incredible experiences of my life.
As I remember it, I don't think anyone was getting paid for it. If they were, they weren't. It wasn't like nobody was getting rich off the session.
Right.
And I can remember Vernon in the session being so thankful to everyone.
Yeah,
and I couldn't communicate it to him, but I wanted to say like, no, man, thank you.
That
because
means, means everything.
I got to be a part of this night. I'll take this over some like really stiff music business, high profile record with all the pressure is to deliver something special in a very definable box.
I mean,
and all the passion is still exited the room.
This was years back, and still something he talks about, and it was like, it meant everything to him.
And people are afraid to approach people of, you know, in our industry of, you know, people of stature because they're afraid that they're not important to us.
Well, who was it?
Absolutely is untrue.
Yeah. Who was saying that to you? You were saying this really famous engineer was like, people don't call me because they think I'm not available, but I'm actually available.
You know, I've read like Chad Blake does that, and
wasn't
Hugh
Neil Dorsman,
Padgham.
Was it?
No. Oh, I love Neil Dorsman.
I don't know. It wasn't Neil, but it was somebody really.
Hugh Padgham says that in an interview. Chad Blake has said that. I mean,
sure.
Of course.
Yep.
This means, and you know what? And they feed off of our enthusiasm, and we feed off of their enthusiasm. Right. And some of these things go off to have a life of their own, unexpected hits. Now that we have YouTube and Spotify, there's a truck driver I'm working for. 5th record with this guy. His last single has 15 million views on YouTube.
Wow.
That's success. He's outsold major label artists.
Yep.
You know?
That's really cool, man. And that's like, you got to make a decision. It's like, okay, some of your day, it's like everything. I'd say if you're a songwriter, you should be writing 10% of songs you're writing should be really dumb and you hate that your name was maybe on them.
Those are called singles.
Right. And then the other 60 to 70% hopefully will be tempo, barn burners. And then whatever's left, the other 20% should be like mid-tempos and slow ballads.
I have a theory that in country, in Nashville, the new up-tempo, 72 is the new up-tempo.
Really?
Yeah. And we used to do the...
Well,
you know,
is it 72 as like a halftime feel?
No, it's just that nobody records those barn burner, you know, the shit kickers anymore. Can I say shit kickers?
You can say whatever you want.
Did the audience just hear like a 1K tone?
No, it's totally uncensored.
You know, if you ever have to bleep somebody out, use like 1.1K just to piss off the
I'll use your
pitch.
fart keyboard. But I think that you need to go to work. Like, let's not pretend that this is all vacation. So it's like you should be doing records that you're like, this isn't the joy of my life. I'm not running to the studio today, but it's like, I got to have a couple of these dingers every year. Right? And you should also be like trying to say, okay, this is like my heartache work, the truckers that maybe I don't expect to do well. And then, you know what? I'm going to do this stuff that really is like just middle of the road. Some demo work, some stuff for developing an artist, some mixes for independents that have the budget to do it. It's like you need a varied diet as a creator, I believe.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, you go broke.
But that comes naturally. Yeah, with that, you go broke, right?
Yeah, the universe teaches you that.
I have a whole studio I need to keep running. So,
and do you have guys working around?
Yeah,
your
a lot of people depending on me to keep working. You know, I have to earn however much thousands, you know, tens of thousands of dollars every month just to stay afloat. It's insane. I would be in the corner cowering if I thought about it too much.
When did you buy?
16 years ago.
Okay, so you bought it.
I was working at another place. Pantera's dad owned a studio. I wired it. And
Pantera's dad?
Yeah, Jerry Abbott was his name. A place called Abtracks. I worked there for 7 years. It was a funeral parlor. Then it was a daycare center.
For that dead drum sound.
And then it was a studio. And they bought a new console, and I wired it. They hired me to wire it. And this is when I was, 24 or something. And nobody knew how to run the console. So when the first call came in for a session, they called me, and I did it. And the producer liked my drum sound. So I worked there for 7 years until he retired.
I love that. So I worked there for 7 years.
Boy, I didn't see daylight, man. I barely had time to wash my clothes.
Who knows how to work this thing? Oh, I can do it. So I worked there for 7 years.
Yeah, boom. It went by just that fast. And then he came and retired, and I went out the next day. I mean, we were booked a year and a half solid in advance.
Oh, my.
Not the whole 7 years, a year and a half, without even a day break. That's how, that was the old Nashville. It was great.
Was it all country or?
It was all, I was working on.
Where was it at?
It was at Berry Hill.
Berry Hill.
Yeah, the new Music Row.
And what is it now?
I don't know. It's just.
Still studio?
I don't think so. He sold it and moved back to Texas, and he was trying to sell it for millions and it wasn't worth it, and I don't know what happened. Maybe.
It would be now.
Yeah, maybe. When I was looking for another studio, there was a 1,100 square foot house there for like $750,000, and I'd have to tear it down because it was so poorly built. Anyway, I found Reflections. It was one of the few buildings in Nashville designed and built as a studio. So it's, separate building tracking room, separate building control room, and has 2 other studios in it. And I went out and got the loans for that day, bought my popcorn machine. And
so this
2 months
was
later,
called Reflections before Ruckus Room.
Yeah, it was built as Reflections in '81. Gene Lawson Microphones.
Oh, yeah.
He designed and built it, ran it successfully until he just got tired of doing it and rented it out. And 16 years, I've been there 16 years. They're going to drag my dead, lifeless body out of there today.
So it went from Reflections right to Ruckus Room.
No, it went to Reflections to Blueberry Hill.
Blueberry Hill.
And I'm not sure how much work they did. I think the guy who had the idea to make it Blueberry Hill, he was working for Soundstage, I think. I signed the lease and I got fired like the next day. So it was in a state of disrepair for years and years. And then I came and cleaned it, and it was nasty.
How many square foot is that?
6,500.
Okay. So your main room, you've got a pretty, as I remember, it's big size.
Yeah, it's not as big as yours. Yours is, you're in a literal barn. It's not quite this big, but it's close. I have a big drum room. I have enough ISO boosts to keep everybody happy, and it's a real nice room. Real piano, real B3, blah, blah, blah. Nice. And that's where I am.
I remember you had offices off to the right as you walked in.
That's now a studio.
Okay, studio was to the left, the main studio.
Yeah.
B room was up in front by the popcorn
in the
machine.
back, yeah. You go through the lounge. There's a back
and
vocal
there was an
booth.
office to the right. So now you have 3 rooms there.
Yeah, the front room's a mixing room, which I bought the big Command whatever D.
And you don't mix in there
because it's Pro Tools.
I get it.
So I was hired to. I was supposed to mix. There was a duo, very famous duo, A-list country artist duo, and it was their last record, and I was supposed
Brooks
to mix
and Dunn.
Well, anyway, and the A&R person, this is back, 10, 15 years ago, didn't think it was appropriate to mix on an analog console, so I lost the gig. And then there was another person. She had a reality show. It was very simple. It was simple. Anyway, she had a reality show. And
why all of a sudden? I see your Facebook post. Why are you so purse-lipped all of a sudden? Come on, give it to us.
Well, anyway, so I was supposed to mix some stuff, and I didn't because I mixed on an analog console.
Oh, wow.
And then the guy who mixed that, the producer came to me the day of mastering, and he was like, he played me the mix. He's like, what's wrong with these? I'm like, dude, pull the faders down and start over. They did like 15 recalls of each mix, and it's still, Anyway, the album, I don't even know if it came out or not, but it scared the shit out of me because I was losing big-time gigs because I didn't mix in the box. So I went out and bought this $150,000 mouse. Did 30 grand worth of construction, in the front room, changing the office into a soundproof room and doing all that kind of nonsense to it. And a gorgeous room. It looks amazing. Sounds really good in there. And I never once used it.
So for people who don't know, D-Control looks like a giant console, but it really is just glorified. It's controlling your Pro Tools rig.
Yeah. It's 32 faders. It's for us guys who like to reach out and grab knobs.
Yep.
That sounded dirty, but it wasn't meant that way. And it was, I'll grab a knob. I'm not scared.
You book that room out, though? Do people mix in there?
Yeah. Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
It still gets work now.
Oh, yeah.
So it makes sense.
It makes sense.
So you mix over there. You mix and track in your room, and your B room's primarily for overdubs and
vocals, yeah.
And how busy can you keep these rooms nowadays?
Dude, I'm busy.
What's the rate at the studio? What's it cost?
I don't know. You have to talk to. I don't like to talk about money. It puts a distance between the clients and myself.
Well, I didn't know. Usually, big commercial rooms have like just card rates.
I'm kind of this weird hybrid. I'm a commercial room, but I'm also like.
Do you charge double for Ken Brown to come in? That's what I really want to ask.
No, but there is a musician in town I charge extra for. But I won't go into that. Anyway, if I know he's not on sessions anymore, but if he is there, the studio manager knows to charge $50 an hour more just because.
Oh, that's funny.
You got to have fun, man. And if you have one guy bringing down the vibe of the session, you just sucks.
If you're like, I'm not a commercial room, I'm a private room.
I probably shouldn't have said any of that.
But when I do sessions, when people do come out, like David Garcia in Mercy Me recorded their last record here. When they do come out, and I might be this way with you, I'm just like, well, tell me what's going on. What do you need to get done? How much do you got? And it's just more like that conversation rather than saying, hey, man, my rate is $1,000 a day for the room or $500 a day for the room or $50 an hour. Because then it's like, okay, then they make their other phone calls. But ideally, I want to like, whenever people that are friends of mine and when I'm working on records with them, I'm like, hey, tell me how this can work. And then you end up sort of figuring
That's how the
it
business is now. You know, you work with somebody in an intimate setting like making a record, you genuinely become friends with these people.
Yeah.
And it, you know, and then the next
time. And they
time,
can get it for free. I tell all my friends. I
need friends.
Not for you. You've got like a bigger, you know, overhead than I have. But like for me, I tell my friends, hey, I'll mix anything for free. I'll do one song for free.
Oh, I've
or
done
I'll
that.
give you my studio or whatever. If you don't have the money, come on down, make a record here and we'll figure it out, you know, and that's all good. Someone can do a lot of records with me, and if they say, hey man, I'm hurting on this thing, can you help me with this budget? They'll get that rate, where some guy who just calls me cold on the phone isn't going to get it.
Oh,
so it's all about figuring out how and building relationships.
Yeah, it's all very fluid.
Yeah, I get it.
It has to be. You can't be 2,500 non-negotiable. You know, those days are long gone. I'm lucky to, you know, it's 750 non-negotiable or whatever it is. You know,
right?
We're way past.
So when you're doing let's say a tracking date, and you know, I know you're not doing demos anymore, but like when you were doing demos, from let's say the downbeat is at 10 a.m. where they're gonna want to start listening to the work tape at 10 a.m.
Always. I was always ready by then.
How early do you have to get there to get everything sounding right to
it's
go?
My studio, it's my setup, and the only time any other engineers ever worked there was when Garth Brooks came. They were recalling. He has the same console as me. He has radars. So he came in a couple years ago and they remixed all of his records. He was in town, needed to do a couple tweaks on some mixes. So they came in, and that was the only time any other engineers ever worked there. So I have my setup. It's a house drum kit. I use pretty much the same musicians, you know, give or take 3 or 4 every instrument. So I know what it's going to sound like. I like to get there early. I show up at 8:45 every morning, whether I'm working or not. It's just this drive in me. But for tracking sessions, I'll show up 8:45. Most of that is hanging out with and talking with the client, musicians, just kind of having fun, putting a positive vibe on the whole place. You know, that's so important to me.
Yeah.
The positive vibe.
The hang.
Dude, it's
to
so
quote
important.
Mike Shimshack.
It's so important to me.
He said the hang. What did you say? The hang's more important than the talent half the time.
Well, no, we're talking about like, you know, he has this apprentice academy school here where he's teaching kids, you know, recording stuff. And I said to him, I was like, are you making sure you get across to them that the hang is...
Oh, absolutely.
Like, you could be super...
People have had whole careers as producers because of the hang, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
100%.
So you would say, like, if you start getting drum sounds at 9:30?
Oh, yeah. Drum sounds, you know what? Before the drummer shows up, even though it's pretty much the same guy, same drum kit, same everything.
Who's your drummer that you use a ton?
Tommy Harden is always my session leader because he writes really great charts.
That's unusual because drummers usually don't write.
He is the most well-rounded musician I think I've ever worked with.
Right.
He was showing a piano. We were doing a really complicated Christmas song. Those Christmas songs have chords. I mean,
I think Danny Rader was he at your place doing that? He posted a chart that was pretty out there.
Those chords on the songs are brilliant, and the keyboard player didn't. He was like searching for it. Tommy Harden got up, goes, "Here it is," and there it was, and got back over and showed.
He's got a band, right? Like with his family.
Yeah, he plays guitar and to sing, and the lead singer.
They do really well. Like they get
great.
Tons of views.
He
on
and
YouTube.
Lori and his kids. You know, he has like 27 kids, and
so it's a normal tracking date is drums, bass, piano B3, guitar,
5 to
utility,
8 musicians,
steel, vocalist.
Yeah.
So to get all that going, it's really like, hey, give me a little level. Okay, drum sound's done. Give me a little this. Give me a little that. And the next thing you know, you're
we're off and running.
9:30.
Well, I show up early. I'll hit I'm a frustrated drummer. I don't play drums. I hit drums. So I get drum sounds, make sure everything's up and going, and I'll go and do mic checks and stuff. But you know, I can kind of anticipate where the levels are going to be. It's always, I know what Pat McGrath's guitar is going to sound like, and it doesn't need an EQ. You just turn it up, and he sounds beautiful. So I'm good. There you go. There's Pat McGrath. And I have the guitarist trade that they know where I like the microphones. A couple of the guitarists in town have my position circled in tape on their amps.
Oh, that's funny. I think I've seen some of those amps.
I get down there on all fours, and I have them blow white noise through there and put my ear next to the amp, and I don't care where it is, wherever it sounds even. I put my finger there, and I put the mic there, and they put tape around it. So anyway, my point is I have these guys trained. We've been working together 25 years, you know.
Yeah.
And so tracking, I'm good. I'm up and running.
Here's the other thing.
I'm always ready by 10.
Nothing replaces somebody who can play an instrument.
Oh boy.
I'll take a closet full of SM57s and make a record on.
I said that. Did
Nashville
you read my
guys.
comment?
No.
That's what I said on one of those posts you were talking about. I said, I don't care about what microphones it is. I'll take a 57 on everything, a Mackie board, and a couple 1176s because you
Right.
saved money on the microphones. And I will make you a record. I'm good.
But the idea of
It's
a guy.
so not about the gear.
Let's say your average drum sound is 15 minutes. Let's say.
I haven't lasted 15 minutes in years.
So maybe even less, 10 minutes, whatever it takes.
When you're beating
The idea of that drum sound, when you're starting off as a kid listening to records, to think like, oh, they got that drum sound in 10 minutes. It's like there's a lot of things that's, you got to have a kit that, kind of pre-mic'd. You got to have a drummer that you're comfortable with and that they know the system. But at the end of the day, it used to take 10 hours to get drum sounds.
amazing.
On records.
And we're still chasing those drum sounds, by the way.
I think my drum sounds are better than they've ever been. And as a kid, I got really mediocre drum sounds, I thought. And it was like I'd spend all day doing it. I would start to second guess myself. Be like, I got to use a different mic on the kick. And then it's like, let's go back to the original thing. Oh,
Right.
it sounds great.
Right. I was lucky. I'm a frustrated drummer. When I was in 6th grade, so I want to become an engineer. My mom told me if I got Eagle Scout, she would buy me a drum set. I didn't really want to learn how to play drums, but I wanted to be in a band so I could record them. See how it twisted? So I got a drum set and then I got a 4-track cassette recorder and I recorded them. And I think I learned how to get drum sounds earlier than, that was my first thing that I mastered was drum sounds. I didn't know how to get, back when I was 25, I didn't know how to get a guitar sound.
Right.
But I knew how to get a good snare sound. I was lost in the guitars until I did a Marty Stewart record and he kicked my ass. And I learned very quickly.
That's a great point. You get guys coming in like.
Oh, and I learned from them. Richard Bennett.
So would he just like say, "Hey, that sounds"?
Yeah, it
move
sounds a
to-
little, it's a little, hey, Jamie, it's a little tinny. And I would go like, oh, shit, what do I do?
Hey, you got a Royer? Why do you put that on there?
And that's when I got down on my hands and knees. Richard Bennett he saw that Marty was getting a little frustrated and he knew that, hey, Jamie could use a little help. And he took me aside. He goes, hey, man, get down, put your ear next to the speaker. And that's where I learned that. It's Richard Bennett. I listened to it, put my ear where it was nice. And Marty was happy from there on out. He knows what he's listening to.
Yeah, and I tell the guys at the school, it's like, I can give you guitar sounds, drum sounds, bass, amp, and DI sounds. I can give you maybe 2 or 3 of just like what I use 99% of the time. And then it's yours.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's
Get
the
your
beauty.
own style.
And then it's yours. You own that. You could tweak it, but
Yeah.
you've always got that to fall back
Absolutely.
on. And it's like, I can make sure that I teach you in a day how to get a world-class drum sound. It took me 30 years to get mine. I can give you everything I know from 30 years in one day. And if you follow that meticulously, even if you want to go take it somewhere else and you don't like it, you can always get back to that.
Absolutely.
And it's like, that's the great part of a Nashville pace of recording where you had a year and a half booked in advance. It was just every day. It was like, after a certain point, you're doing this. Muscle memory, it's just like.
A lot of it, yeah.
Think about how hard it was to balance on a bicycle until then you don't even, your brain doesn't even think
Yeah,
of
then
it.
your hand, look, no hands.
And
You're
you've got
off and-
that as all the drum stuff you need, all the bass things that people throw at you, whether it be upright or whether it be active or
and
passive.
We're so spoiled here with Nashville musicians. They're the best in the world. We have the best community of musicians in the world here. Mark Hill, you come in, he gives you a line, you plug it into Pro Tools, and you're done.
If
like a record.
if somebody comes in, I had someone come into a studio. I was working in Pittsburgh, and they were playing a giant harp, like not harp,
Right.
mouth harp,
Like
harp,
Harpo Marx.
like
Ring.
Cupid, but
Right.
giant. And
Like, like dreamy sequence.
I walked out there, and this woman's playing this harp, and I walked around this harp about 10 times. And I'm like, I'm not even sure where the sound was coming from, right?
The heavens.
And then I just did this. I said, hey, where does it sound good? Where do people usually mic this thing? It's like, you have to be confident enough at a certain point to say, what's in the best interest of this recording? Hey, I bet you that woman who plays the harp might have an opinion about where I should put the microphone. And it's like, the engineer in me doesn't want to do that.
So a quick story. I needed a harp on a song, just a ring. That's it. I could have used a sample, but I wanted to get a real harpist in there. So my friend called the Nashville Symphony. They gave us the number of the harpist. Is that the harp player? harpian. I don't know. And we called, and she said, "Yeah, you have it charted out." I'm like, "It's not a chart. It's basically
You could just bring your harp, and I'll drag my fingers along.
Right, push the pedal, and I'll do it." And she goes, "Well, I need a chart. I need it written out." I'm like, "It's not that kind of thing." She goes, "Well, I don't jam." No, we're not asking. I don't.
I've dealt with some classical musicians that have had the same
bizarre.
deal. If it wasn't written out, man, they had no, and they're incredible musicians. It's very strange.
Well, I tell you what I worry about is the next crew of kids, because all these people that are getting really good at engineering at Pro Tools, they're engineers, de facto engineers. I did a session with a 55-piece symphony at Ocean Way. When I first got to town, I rented a little ISO booth from this guy who did commercials, and he did a Genesis Diamond commercial. It was a really big budget thing. So he said, "Hey, can you record a symphony?" And I had recorded symphonies before in Pittsburgh. So I said, yes, and we went over to Ocean Way.
Good
and
room.
they had 55 people. And 55 people doesn't sound like a lot of people until you put them in a room with timpanis. And then it's like, it's an ocean of people. It's like, looking out at the, Bridgestone Arena of people. So I show up at the studio, and they have two assistants. One was a girl, and one was a dude. And I remember
22.5 people each for each assistant.
Yeah, and keep in mind that when you do a symphony session, if there's a bad mic cable out there.
Wait, 27. Oh, never mind. That was bad math.
When you have a bad mic cable out there, the time it takes your assistant to run out and put a new cable on just costs the session $500 because the symphony union rate is so high. These guys were so good, the assistants, that all I did was along the mic pre's on this giant Neve, right? Made sure all the levels were in Pro Tools. Made sure that there was no buzzes and that left was left and right was right, which we did beforehand. But these assistants that came up through the old Nashville process, which
what year was this?
Is dying. It's got to be 2006.
Okay. Right.
These people, we aren't getting new ones. And I got all the credit because I got on the comm after they went through this piece and I said, "We're ready to go." And the
conductor.
Thank you. The conductor said to me, "Oh," you could tell they were startled. They were like, "Oh, do you mind if we do it a couple times for us?" It was not even on their radar that we could possibly be ready. But I tell you what, it had nothing to do with me.
He asked you for permission, Mr. Engineer.
Yeah. It was nothing to do with me being a genius. It was the assistants that had worked that room, knew every buzz. And we had a tree of mics up and everybody was sectionally and individually mic'd. It was a labyrinth of cables and logistics and a console. That console's probably 100 inputs, right? I mean,
I love that console.
It's giant. And literally all I did was make sure we didn't have any overs and got a mix up that sounded good. Mm-hmm. And it was like, I'm worried because the real world of that kind of recording that needs to happen in the future, where are those cats coming from? Because everyone just goes into their bedroom and gets superior drummer. But for a dude that can go in and do that, and I did that, and it was a high stress session, but they did all the heavy lifting on that. They're the next crew coming up, and it's I don't think that there's people interning at these rooms that are going to take over large format recording. I think it's going to be a dying art.
I totally agree with you. Music has changed. It's all sample packs. It's not really recording musicians. I mean, you have one microphone and you're good. The only acoustic thing you really have to record is a human voice and maybe a guitar or something. I don't know. It's just bizarre to me.
It's just an odd thing because we've got this history of legendary dudes that came up like you came up and like I came up and all the guys in town that can handle anything that you can throw at them. Half the time you can hit your middle C and a whole orchestra will come out now.
Yeah.
So we're losing that, and I'm just wondering is there a place where people do you have interns over there that you think will grow up and be able to be at that level?
Out of all the interns I've ever had, dozens and dozens and dozens, 2 have known what they were doing. I'm not sure what the others were there for. I tried to teach them, but after a while, you can only try so much.
Yeah.
I'm so passionate about it that I thought I was feeling a little bit like a stage parent pushing this information on them.
Right.
I'm so passionate about knowing the ins and outs of all things audio. I'm a real propeller head. I may look cool, but I'm a real propeller head. I love to know the technical ins and outs. I want to know the reason why this is that and this is that. And they just weren't interested. They were, they wanted to make me,
Do you
make
still
beats.
have interns coming?
No, I'm good.
So you have a couple engineers? When you do a tracking gig, do you have an assistant?
No, never have. I've never used an assistant. So it's all.
Because everything stayed mic'd up then, pretty much?
Even when I was independent, hopping from room to room, I did it all myself. I would show up at 8 a.m. and wire it all up, put all the mics and do all the checks. And I don't know why. I'm that guy, I guess. I'm a little...
I'm not that guy. I will gladly have 2 people at Ocean Way miking up 55 people.
Oh, that is a high pressure situation, and they're there to take the pressure off of you. Yeah. And it worked. I mean, I'm sure you were still feeling the pressure.
Oh, definitely pressure, but it was like, man, that was like...
That sounds like a brilliant session. I bet you were feeling like you were 1,000 feet tall at the end of that one.
Here's another good thing that we should talk about is like how many times in your life I was raised with like a really crazy mentor that was like, he didn't care. We were going to do it. If somebody was going to give him money to book the room, he was going to take the money and he was going to figure out how to deliver product.
That's great.
Genius.
Yes.
And he was a genius. He's a very smart guy. His name is Greg Vizza. And I learned through those years to never say no as an engineer. If somebody said, hey, can you do a 5.1 surround or 8-channel discrete surround for a planetarium? I went through periods where I was winning awards for planetarium mixes.
That's awesome.
But it was like, do I have any business doing true discrete channel 8 surround? No, I don't. But it's like, well, go ahead. Try it. If you do try to do, I have found that when I do 10 things and that I'm unsure of, I don't think I've ever failed.
Right.
And it's just like, sure, you sleep a little bit uneasy for the next couple days before the thing, and you go in early and you make sure you cover all your bases. But how much of that is your success, where it's just like, man, I can figure it out. I'm not sure. I might not be the guy that won the Grammy for that last year, but I think we can do this, and I'm the guy because I choose to be the guy.
It's the same process, whether you're recording MC Hammer or, a country demo, it's the same process. It's a microphone that when I had interns, the first day they were there, I made them record a guitar, a vocalist, do all the edits, do all the tuning, do all the edit, the mix. And I said, everything I do is just that expanded. If you know how to record one thing with one microphone, if you're doing a symphony date, it's just a bunch of that. It's the same thing.
Yeah. And what you really learn is to be prepared for the next thing that you're going to do in 15 minutes.
That's just experience.
It's like, okay, we just tracked that whole band, and everyone's like, hey, give me a channel for this, give me a track for that. I want stereo track for this. And you're like, wait a minute, I was only prepared for the first part of this session.
Isn't that funny?
That's a whole different thing.
The second pass is like setting up for a completely new tracking session. Yeah, no. You got to rearrange the headphone mix, and it's just, oh.
Are you a musician?
I hit drums.
Okay, you know how to read a chart.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so
I didn't until I just got thrown in sessions when I was an intern. At school, they didn't teach us the Nashville number system. Can you believe that? I went back and I was like, God, you got to teach us how to align a tape machine and the Nashville numbers. And they're like, really? So I learned that on my internship, and now I can read a chart. I can write a chart.
So can you tell? Oh, that's the one chord just by ear now.
Oh yeah, like 4 5, yeah, flat 3, flat 7.
Good. So you go, that's a minor 4.
Is there a test coming up? I'm getting a little nervous.
Saying, but that's what happens. They say, hey, take me back to that minor 4.
Yeah.
And you'll be like, oh, I know what that is.
Well, I take really good when I'm tracking. I take a number, minute, second, every 4 bars.
Okay, and you write it onto the chart.
Yeah, I write it every 4 bars. There's a number there, so I can just get back to quickly.
Like you wouldn't self-describe yourself as a musician, but it's like you're a dude that could probably listen to the radio on a trip and say 6 chord, 4 chord, 4 over 5.
And it wasn't me trying to learn it. It was just out of years, 25 years of hearing it.
So it's not this part of what really intimidated me about songwriting was like, I thought, I can write some good songs, but it's like half of that is just a muscle.
Oh yeah.
And you're great every once in a while, and you're brilliant every once in a while. But it's like you do it like that, and it's like a dude who would not call himself a musician can sit in a car and tell you that's a 6 minor, go into a flat 3.
When kids are learning how to speak, for some reason, my 5-year-old learned how to speak. I didn't give him lessons; he just learned.
I think that's comforting for people that want to do this. It's like you will learn things that you think are gifts.
But you need to be around people who know what they're doing.
Yeah.
You can't. I mean, if you go to your friend's bedroom and it's just the two of you trying to figure it out, you're not going to learn. You're really not going to learn by YouTube tutorials either.
Yeah, it's like you learn how to get great guitar sounds from great guitar players.
Right, exactly. It was Mike Campbell and Richard Bennett teaching me how to mic
That's a good room to be in.
Oh my God. Come on, man.
Crazy. Like, Mike, shh. I'm the engineer here.
And you know what it was? It was a car speaker mounted in a wooden box. That's what Richard Bennett was playing through. And Mike Campbell was on this little Princeton amp, a 1964 Princeton amp that I now own. And they said, put your ear there. And it was a 57 Mike Pre.
How loud
tape.
are you running this white noise through the amp when you go out?
No, it's just like you set your guitar down, pedals on, so you hear the shh.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
That's the, it's not even that loud. This is really, really
And when you
amplified.
move your ear around, it'll become clear and full in one place.
Yeah, you can hear where the highs and the lows are balanced.
I definitely had
Stick the
heard
mic
of that.
right
Of
there.
somebody taking a mic and put headphones on and moving around.
Yeah, that's another way to do it. Crank in the headphones and listen to it. But
How much of your life is spent just absorbing? Like when you got somebody in the room that you're like, oh man, I really respect this person. It's like, I want to see everything they're doing to get that sound.
I kind of collect these old engineers. So, like I've become friends with them on the Facebooks. So, social media is awesome for this. There is a guy I worshiped for years. And this is, he made a record back in 92 that I love, Extreme 3. I don't know, it's the band called Extreme. But they had that song More Than Words and Wholehearted. Okay.
Who was the engineer?
Bob St. John. When that album came out, I was in college. I skipped my whatever history class or something, went to Turtle Records, bought the CD, spent the rest of the day absorbing that record, and I'd never heard drum sounds like that.
Yeah.
I was excited about the record, and then when I heard it, it sounded nothing like I'd ever heard before because these drum sounds are still unique. Nobody has since even copied them. And I absorbed it. I didn't know who Bob St. John was. I didn't know how to get in contact. But now on Facebook, I'm buddies with the guy. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And when I go to AES conventions, I was always, even when in my 20s, I was always going up to, I was not scared to call Jack Joseph Puig. I called him, when I was 25, and he spent an hour and a half on the phone with me. They're just so generous. Bob Clearmountain has always been very, very kind. Neil Dorfsman, these guys. I kind of collect these guys.
Well, that's the way to do it. And with musicians and players and producers, there's so much. If you can get to a place with some people that are really banging, you can really learn a lot.
I learned something last week from Bob on Facebook about snare miking that I'd never even thought of. Oh, he hates the under snare mic.
Yeah.
It's not something you listen to. It's awful. It goes, it's not a very musical sound, but if you tuck it in, it adds the clarity. You kind of
I've learned a ton of great drum things from
He does a side. Yeah, right.
What I was just going to say, Near Z does a side snare thing that whenever I looked at it, I said, that's the stupidest thing I've ever seen. And then he brought it up, and I was like, hey, show me the snare. And he told me about this. He uses a 451 really high, like 10 foot above the kit, just looking down a mono one. I'm like, oh, that's bullshit. And then he turned it,
Neil, right?
He turned it on. I was like, oh, shit, I went out and bought two 451s. Near Z has taught me a ton about drums and even like processing drums. He turned me on to the Trans-X plugin from Waves that I never used. It was in the folder, but I never used the thing. And it's like he turned me on to that in regards to getting ping on tom. But then I started using it to get rid of click on kick drum. And it is the best declicker of a kick drum I've ever heard. So, it's really, that's what it is. You need to find people that you admire, people that you respect.
Absolutely.
And then try to be in the room and then try to just chill. Like every minute I'm talking is a minute they're not talking.
Oh boy, that's great. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, awesome, dude. Thank you for coming by and all the way out here to the Sticks. I know you live around here, but
I live in the same zip code, but it's still like a 45-minute drive home.
yeah,
It's really.
that's an odd thing about Franklin.
Yeah, but it's Friday, and this is kind of like an early weekend for me. Thanks for that excuse.
Do you have a website or anything for people to reach out if they want to work with you?
Ruckusroom.com, RUKKUS, and I think JamieTate.com or maybe TheJamieTate.com. There was this girl who came to me to record her. Her name was Jamie Tate.
Oh, I remember her.
Yeah, and she had a single, and she came to me to do her second record, and she was Jamie Tate, so I became the Jamie Tate. How egotistical!
And do yourself a favor, find him on Facebook and just get him on your timeline because you will zoom back up to his posts and laugh nonstop. You know who else we're getting on? I think he's on next week is Jim Moose Brown.
Oh, Moose. I love Moose.
He's got the funniest in-session videos I've ever seen. The guy is like...
Yeah, he's always singing along with the work tapes. Really, really painfully sharp. It's awesome.
Yeah.
He's played, Justin Moore. I've had, I don't know how many number ones with Justin, but Moose is on like every single one of them. He's awesome. He was one of the first musicians I met here in town.
Yeah.
back in the day.
I know him. I played rounds in Kentucky. I played a songwriter round with him, and it was just kind of like...
Yeah, and then he became this big songwriter.
Well, I heard he was just a session musician, and I'm like...
He played piano.
What's a session musician? And then he got up on stage and like blew everybody off the stage with his great songs, and like, you know, it was just like playing piano, playing guitar, and it's just like...
He's a keyboard session player, and then he played guitar for Bob Seger, and then he's writing this 17-week #1.
Which one was that? Like 5 o'clock somewhere.
5 o'clock somewhere with Don Rollins. Yeah.
Oh, jeez, man, I want to kill him.
Amazing, changed his life.
Yeah, good for him. And he seems like such a sweet dude.
He is. He's
sweet
a very
dude.
very cool guy.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Maybe you could give me a list of your socials. We'll put them down in the description so people can click on it and associate themselves with you, even whether you want to associate with them or not. It's yet to be determined. But we thank you, and we're signing off here from the West Barn. We'll see you next time.